live? Oh, hey, we are live. Hello, welcome to News from the Beta World. I'm Ryan Erickson, and to the left of your screen is Niels Pflaeging. Hello, Neil.
Hello, Ryan. Thanks for inviting me again.
Who else should I
Thanks for not giving up.
Thanks for writing me up.
What is this, episode 85?
This is episode 88.
88. Oh my God, I was lost in space. Okay.
Well, so this brings up a Kill Bill reference for like the crazy 88s. You know that you remember that scene in Kill Bill.
Yes.
We are speaking to our generation. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Oh, good. So the topic of today is something we have been talking about doing for a long time. We've been talking about bringing qomenius here into the News from the Beta World, nay, Beta Codex live space, for a long time, because learning is important. Learning has been a big part of the Red 42 work for a long time, with learning circles and how I came to be deeply involved with the Beta Codex work was through what was the product in the world before qomenius, which would have been discourse. Yes. But qomenius is now the tool. It has matured, and I would love it if you would take a few moments to talk about what it is, why it is, and why this tool is so beautiful and important.
Yes. I mean, why did we hesitate so long? 88 episodes to talk about qomenius, because we never want to do this about propaganda. You know, this is not this podcast is not supposed to about marketing or propaganda. So I was hesitant to suggest a topic. We were hesitant to touch upon this. But then again, why not talk about it, right? It feels kind of crazy. It's one thing I have been working on for 8 years or so. So why not talk about it? Yes, because qomenius went through several iterations. I forgot to pick up the booklet that was the first incarnation. Learning Circles by Red 42, that was the first name of this. And I mean, today qomenius is a software platform, a learning platform, an online learning platform. You do group learning sessions on the web with 4, 5, or 6 people. These sessions take usually 90 minutes. They can be a little less, but around 90 minutes. It's time boxed. It's without facilitation and facilitators and teachers, which is why we picked the time for the session as well. And but in the beginning, this was this was entirely different. When we called it Learning Circles by Red 42, it was meant to be a physical thing. You know, a box with content would be placed on a table. 4, 5, or 6 people would be sitting around the table, and they would do a learning session together in the space, right? That's how we launched it, 2018 or 2019.
Wow. No, go ahead.
But even before that came the didactics. So
So I'm going to start right there, because when I read the paper, the original discourse white paper, this idea of discourse didactics was like, ooh, that's fundamentally a different way of doing it. Would you kind of go into that a little bit?
Yes. I mean, this takes us even further in time. I once went to Montreal, Canada, and I did a workshop, and this wonderful guy, Phil Lanier, joined the session. He is a partner with Henry Mintzberg on a company that's called Coaching Ourselves, and they had this idea of taking out the teacher out of the session, right? I think that this idea was born from the notion that business school teaching often doesn't work the way it should work. Management development programs are kind of boring and frontal teaching based. So all this kind of managerial learning, and so it's kind of sucks. And they were looking for an alternative, and they came up with this idea of small group learning, of course inspired by several things, but basically had this idea that people around the table should talk for 90 minutes, work through a resource together that is slightly time boxed, and learn with each other, for each other, as we call it in the Beta Codex network.
Yeah.
Right. So I met this guy. He came to my workshop on Organize for Complexity. Pflaeging participated. Very nice guy. And after the session, he said, this is great content, Organize for Complexity. We should produce a module of content for coaching ourselves, which I did. Yes. So that was my entrance into that didactics.
In that didactics and learning and development, or what organizational learning. You hadn't, before that point, there was no formalized offering for your consulting firm for Red 42 that was related to organizational learning specifically. Is that true?
What we did before was the usual workshops. We didn't do trainings, but we did workshops, and that doesn't scale. So we were looking, Silke and I, with Red 42, we were always looking for a learning approach that would scale. And so I developed this module for coaching ourselves. I showed it to Silke. She said, this is interesting, right? And Pflaeging, and the people from Coaching Ourselves, maybe even Henry Winsberg, I do not know, they tested the module and rejected it. They thought it was bad.
Why was it bad? Did they give you specific feedback on what was bad about it, or is it just
maybe I forgot, or maybe I created maybe I blocked the memory. Maybe I have the email here, but I think they didn't give a very good reason, which is okay, right? Because I read it as they hated the content, and now the funny thing is, guess what content it was?
I was going to say complexities, red and the blue.
I never told you this story. No, more basic, more basic.
Was it just alpha versus beta, or
more
power
fundamental?
over?
More fundamental. It's your preferred topic.
Ensemble work, group work, group collaboration.
Theory why, and how it leads to either self-organization or
self-organizing.
How it's how our mental model about human nature impacts on how we design organizations. I thought it was a very witty, very straightforward, very interesting module, and they didn't like it. Okay, so of course, thinking about it, it gives you a lot of insight that we don't want to discuss today, right?
Yeah.
And
it's a fundamental flip.
I'm thankful to Coaching Ourselves for having rejected it, because of course I went back to Silke and said, okay, they think it's shit. So what do we make from it?
How do we turn this shit into something that's
no, it was like, what's wrong with them? That's what our discussion was. What's wrong with them that they reject this module? Because there was nothing bad about it. I think the module was very good. Even in their concept, it was very good. So we kind of started deconstructing, okay, why did they, what is the logic behind their rejection, And we figured out, it is too polemic, it is kind of
dogmatic, maybe,
it questions the thinking and so on. So we found excellent reasons why they rejected it, and we didn't. After a few glasses of wine with Silke and our discussion, we overcame my disappointment, and we figured out, we need the not a problem. The problem that I had, so to speak, in that situation was that I hadn't quite understood their approach, their business model, which was 4 managers discussing among them and having a good time, talking. And so we concluded, okay, what would it be if we took out this didactic idea, self-organized learning, time-boxed sessions, content given to people, but what if we change everything else? What if we make this not just for managers as they did, but what if we make it truly inclusive for everyone in organizations, everybody who's working? What if we do not limit the content to managerial stuff? Because Coaching Ourselves is very focused on managerial topics from Henry Winsberg's books and so on, and friends and famous people and so on. And stuff that we partially would reject as the Beta Codex network, of course. So we said, okay, why not take beta content? Why not extend this beyond managers and to everyone in organizations? Why not make this truly team-based,
Yeah.
And why not, make the didactics a little bit more rigorous? And so we did. Yes, so we created a very different introduction. We took out the fame and glory thing that they used, and probably are still using a little bit of author's
Fame
name.
and glory?
Yeah, famous author. The module is famous author. Today in Comenius, we don't say anything like that. We don't. It doesn't matter who wrote it. And and so we made many changes to the didactics. We also thought that the content and the didactics required more interaction, more sophisticated interactions and interventions, more colorful interventions, so to speak. Not just content question to the group. Content question to the group. Another question to the group. Content question to the group. We thought it should be more playful, more
like the content rules the group instead of the group working through the content.
We thought this deserved more didactic. This kind of format of learning deserved more richness in interventions. And so we went to that, and we created Learning Circles by Red 42, published a paper. First print, then online. You've seen a later version. Then we we launched this. We had a company here in Bavaria, in Germany, that became the first client. And then COVID came, and exactly, people couldn't sit around a table for a few weeks, months, as we know. Then it extended much longer. So by then we had colleagues in Croatia who thought, okay, we should turn this into a software, and I was strictly against that. I said, this cannot work. Of course it works. And so there was a first version of the software. We called it Discourse. Now there is a much more enhanced version of the software that's called qomenius. Qomenius, the name it's derived from a personality, a European thinker,
Dutch?
John Amos Comenius. Yes, he was born in what I think today is the Czech Republic, but he lived in different places. He'd also lived in Germany at the time, studied in Heidelberg, I think. And he passed away in the Netherlands as an old man. But he was he was as he lived in this troubled time of religious war in Europe. He really.
Was this time-wise? Was this in the 1800s?
About Rembrandt's time, let's say. I always like to say, imagine Rembrandt, the painter. Same time. So yes, John Amos Comenius, as he's called in English. Of course, Comenius was a Latin name he adopted, but this Latin name Comenius with a C, we changed it a little bit. Changed it into a Q at the beginning. So we are paying homage to John Amos Comenius with our company's name, and he was his most famous book. Comenius' most famous book is called Didactica Magna, the grand didactics. Yes, so he was a pioneer of modern didactics, really. For example, one of the most beautiful things that he preached, that he was firmly convinced, he was very beta. He said, learning and violence towards the learner doesn't work well. I'm against it. So he had this profound insight: do not punish or torture the learner during the learning process. Fear doesn't work so well in the context of learning. That's part of modern didactics.
There's two things. One, I'd like you to go a little far back. So not everybody's going to know what didactics are. That's the first thing.
Especially in the English-speaking world, where this word is almost unknown. I'm aware of that, of course. Didactics is like, it means learning method or approach to learning, what most people would refer to pedagogy, right? Pedagogy, of course, in principle refers to children, but it doesn't. Pedagogy is really for adults as well. That, of course, in the English-speaking world, that's sometimes referred to as andragogy, I think, but it's kind of a useless term. So we might call it pedagogy, method of learning, or didactics. It's pretty much the same. In German, for example, we use the word didactics much more often than you would do in the US or people in the UK or in Australia. So
Yeah.
So so this is where we got the learning method, how we put it together, from influences from Canada, and a lot of our own thinking and research at the time. So at the time, about hundreds and hundreds of books about didactics, pedagogy, learning, business schools, and so on.
Yeah, because that just thinking about didactics and in other words, that practice maybe of didactics, and that so because a self-oriented learner, someone who takes in learning on their own, not in a school type environment where they're trained and taught, would be like an autodidact. That's a term that is common.
That's where you use the term. Interesting. Yes, I hadn't thought of that. Of course, autodidact, self-taught. Yes.
Self-taught. And the other thing you mentioned was about violence. That training, teaching another person is like this form of violence, which brought up two names for me. One, which would be the De La Salle, like one of the original, the ones who it's an Italian, I think, that brought group teaching into the form. And one of the methods of teaching was that it would be this reward system. There would be the reward system and the penalty system that kids would stand on the red square if they got an answer wrong. And if they didn't, they would get some kind of reward. So this is all leading up to Alfie Kohn a little bit as well. So the penalty rewards.
I think Alfie Kohn is a great figure in contemporary, of course, more children-oriented didactics or pedagogy. Yes. Oh, yes. That's a wonderful author. If for anybody who wants to understand this kind of approach we're talking about, Alfie Kohn is a wonderful source. John Dewey is a wonderful source. I think he was American, right? An American pioneer of education. And we have other pioneers like Maria Montessori, of course.
This is the small group learning, very Montessori and very almost tragically disrespected as kind of a woo-woo way of learning. But again, it's so important.
And this whole notion that Miss Montessori brought into the game of saying people learn more when they learn for each other, with each other, and not just for themselves.
In cooperation, in group, instead of in competition.
And helping each other and interacting. So this is very Montessorian learning that we put into this didactics, much more than our colleagues from Canada did at the time. I think we wanted to make this truly conversational. So I think we took great care, and we are taking great care never to make this. Every question needs to be framed in a way that it can. In qomenius, every question needs to be framed in a way everybody can relate to it, understand it, and make sense of it. And it's never about knowledge. So we're never testing knowledge in this didactics. We're never testing people or grading. There's usually or almost never a right or wrong thing in qomenius. It's really about complexity and discussing. It's like very different than e-learning. The qomenius didactics, the discourse dynamics that we developed, is about figuring things out together through conversation.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes. Again, it's okay that if in different sessions you have different levels of consciousness or quality of dialogue and so on. That's okay.
Yeah. Well, you have the diversity of thought, diversity of capability, diversity of skill, mastery in that point. And then you come into conversation to develop a shared understanding of the material. Of course, we want interpersonal dynamics and all that kind of stuff.
Of course, one of the concepts of qomenius, our didactics, is also that the groups themselves should be as diverse as possible. The 4, 5, or 6 people doing a session together should be diverse. And we created a concept that our colleagues from Canada didn't envision, the concept of the cycle. So a group should be continuous for a cycle of learning, which might be 3, 4, or 5 sessions. 90 minutes each. Yes. Right. So we created this concept of keeping the cycle, the group of learning together, which we call a circle. A circle is a group of learners that do 3, 4, or 5 sessions together. At the beginning, we envisioned always doing 5 sessions. Today we have cycles that take 3 sessions, 4 sessions, 5 sessions.
Yeah. So in the session space, again, this is rhythm. This is developing your sense of an ensemble.
Yes.
We're learning this together. We're bonding together because we're bonding over a particular field of knowledge, body of knowledge, shared understanding, all that kind of stuff that doesn't happen when you get blasted with a bunch of content and are punished for not doing this. This also is the certification thing. It's like, oh, I've taken the blast, I vomited up the information, and now I get a special little cookie for doing that thing.
Of course, you can use qomenius, the qomenius learning system as well for certifications. You know, people who actually did the 5 sessions together.
Yeah.
And attended, you know, were part of the conversation properly, they get a certificate. That's also possible with qomenius, but it's not the way of, you know, testing.
I mean, and again, the certification mills and the certification industrial complex, whatever you want to call it.
Yes.
But again, if the point is about developing your understanding of an idea, yes, but I think that the problem is the meaninglessness of several certificates, because the knowledge is, you go to a boot camp and get your certification as a safe, you know, project program consultant just because you've consumed a fire hose of information. But there are some safe trainers and SPCTs out there who do a group oriented kind of learning. So that again, I don't want to be completely, you know, all teachers are bad, because they're not.
No.
But it is about the pedagogical aspect of it.
The
other, I wanted to bring one other name in here just because it came to my mind. You said pedagogy, and also the idea of power and pedagogy brings up Paulo Freire about the pedagogy of the oppressed and that dynamic, and like, okay, all of these things were happening. Well, Montessori happened a lot earlier, but the concept of pedagogy of the oppressed, all these kinds of things, those are very beta ideas, in that this is about releasing yourself from power over dynamics, and the teacher-student thing being a one that was lived with for a long time. So and again, this is coming up. This is around because the Beta Codex Network came up in 2008. You'd started doing, and learning circles came in 2018. And then so the time in between, I'm trying to think time-wise, where the germ of the idea was when we were talking about, you went to the conference. When was that again? The 2010, 2012?
I mean, I would have to look it up, but
had the Beta Codex Network been established at that point?
The Beta Codex Network was established, and
Beyond Budgeting was certainly there too.
No. This was 10 years after the foundation, roughly 10 years after the Beta Codex Network was founded. So well into the history of the Beta Codex Network. The problem is that with Silke and I, we always had this problem that when we were working with larger organizations, we couldn't scale the learning. We couldn't get people to learn fast enough. So this was at the same time when we figured out, this was roughly the same time when we figured out Open Space Beta.
Yeah. So this, what was the first module that you did in this self-organized learning way? What was the concept that you wanted to get? Was it the same thing?
Theory X, theory Y. It was theory Y, and how this is related to alpha and beta. There was a link there into that, but it was human nature and the consequences, you know. So that was, then it became our first discourse, the first learning circles by Red 42 module. And then we created other modules that were all centered around organizational development, like the difference between the blue and the red, you know, complicated and complex. Decentralization, org physics, relative targets. Those were the kind of modules that we created first, right? Today, the situation is kind of different, you know, it's very different really, because our platform has now evolved so much. You know, we have so many features, so many interventions in our system, that we can create much more colorful modules, you know, with much more interesting interventions. And we also went beyond organizational development topics, because that was kind of restricted. Yeah, so we ventured out of that in a few years ago. I'm not sure, 2 or 3 years ago, we started qomenius Nano for team development. So there are 9 different cycles of learning for team development.
And so as far as I don't know if you necessarily want to talk about the product tiers at this point, but you made a little bit of a mention before, but your original presentation of qomenius was in a cycle of the 5, the 5 circles. I forget whether each was it a week between circles that you did, so that you did the learning, then you kind of sat with it for a week, or was it like multiple times a week? Was there a standard cycle time?
Yes. I mean, there are many approaches that are valid, but usually you should never do 2 qomenius sessions in a day. One shall suffice, right? And we usually suggest that there should be a few days between each session. Okay. A normal thing might also still be to have a weekly session, but really learners can set up the sessions whenever they want, at their convenience, especially when the sessions are virtual. And yes, but at one of my clients, for example, they did some of the learning groups, the cycles as we call them. They did a session one day, then a day off, then the next session on the 3rd day, and on the 5th day the last session. So three sessions in a week. That's possible. But also what happens in the qomenius didactic is that people usually feel kind of tired after the 90 minutes. The sessions are very intense.
For sure.
Very intense. It really requires learners to engage in conversation, in discourse, in serious conversation. And it's much denser than we are sitting together in a circle having chit chat.
Well,
it's very rigorous in terms of time boxing of the contents and so on.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fun, again, it's like everything else we talk about in the Beta Codex network. They are fundamental differences in perspective. And that even in this learning, talk about either I'm consuming the information, I'm consume, to have, the knowledge will just happen because I'm consuming it. I metabolize the knowledge, as opposed to I am creating this knowledge with someone else. We are creating this thing together. It's co-creation
through the conversation. Through the conversation, it goes as a good example to illustrate this is, of course, I develop modules as well. Silke has developed plenty of modules, and we always test the contents, the modules ourselves with our own team, Red42, qomenius team. And so all the sessions we develop, we test them ourselves. And it still surprises me that whenever I do a module, recently I developed these 3 modules on Toast. We tested them all, and once we do the modules, it doesn't matter if I know the content inside out. I mean, for some exercises, it makes things a little bit more obvious or so, but most of the time, doing the 90 minutes of a session, it doesn't matter that I wrote the stuff, or that I even created the content in the first place. It doesn't matter, because it's still through the conversation that everything happens, and you could do the same session module with different people over and over. It would always be different. So qomenius has nothing to do, zero zip to do with knowledge transfer of knowledge. It's really about engaging in conversation, and that's the design, that's the didactics of qomenius, that it is not at all about the knowledge. The knowledge is kind of irrelevant. It's subcutaneous, subtly you learn something about the content, but it's really as you so well put it, the learning, the knowledge is constructed in conversation, and that will differ from session to session. It's really surprising, kind of. It's very similar to open space, of course. But more difficult as it's more strictly time bound, right? It's more strictly time boxed. Then there are interventions, so it's denser than an open space session usually is. It can be very dense, of course. But it feels a little bit more like open space. Yes. Which was a big inspiration in developing this didactics too, right? We took a lot from open space, a lot of the concepts, the kinks, so to speak.
Is there, in thinking about this, again, the type of content in terms of the topical content, I would imagine that there's a traditional kind of skill-based learning, like I got to know the skills, I got that may be more of appropriate. I don't even know like how to say that, but I would equate this kind of traditional content to you need to learn how to play an instrument. You got to learn what the strings are. You got to learn what the notes are. If I want to read music, reading music in general is probably not the kind of thing you want to do in a small group together where everyone's at a different place. Maybe there are some people who do it, but there's a level of skill development that is there. That what the learning topics we're talking about is about engaging in thinking, learning how to think together, and learning that the interaction, and learning how to interact, and learning how to interact with the content, make sense of it together, and that's a kind of topic domain that's different from skill-based learning. Is that
Sure.
How would you make that distinction between those two? As I clumsily tried to do.
No, you did it well. It's an important point. You play the bass, I play the guitar, but we both have basses, right? So you could think, okay, you bring it on, man. It's a beautiful alembic. We can only see the head. We're only able to see the head, but okay. So qomenius, if you want to learn the bass, it's a lot of individual practice, right? And you can do that with or
individual practice.
Exactly, and that's not what qomenius is for.
No,
qomenius is not developed for individual practice. It is for conversational interaction, small group learning within the group, at the same time. So a good example would be education around democracy. Yeah, it's very ambiguous, and to reflect in a session about the founding fathers and how democracy came about, in America. I recently watched a Netflix show that is about the foundation, the American Experiment. I think that's the title. Produced by the actor here, Tom Hanks. Very good Netflix show. I recommend it. Highly recommend it. And there was a lot of content that I thought, okay, this would make for a great qomenius module, to discuss things. Of course, there are several episodes of that. You could create several great qomenius modules around this. And as democracy is such an ambiguous thing that needs to be, deciphered, interpreted all the time, there's often no right or wrong. I mean, sometimes there is, right? But most often there isn't. There's space for interpretation. And especially if you want to learn about democracy and how to be a good citizen, how to be a citizen, really, there's a lot to debate. So it's that's perfect content for qomenius. That's why organizational development, team development works so well. We are currently doing stuff around education of child welfare and so on. TOS, learning the TOS system. Yes. So we're developing lots of contents in different fields, and it's we have only begun to explore the topics. Yes, I'm just using the democracy example because I think it's easy to figure out. Okay, democracy sessions, that would make sense in our divided times. It would be lovely in America to have more discursive learning sessions between people from the Democratic and the Republican Party, for example, to understand do not differ on things, and why they differ on certain things, and why that may not matter that much in many cases.
Well, exactly. I mean, people coming to know each other and get to know each other more and more and more,
listen to each other really, and engage in serious conversation, not just blaming, not just bollocks, as the British say, right?
Well,
to overcome partisanship, it's a beautiful dialectic to unite people again, and to make people understand things together. And of course, this can be this kind of didactics. It works for everything that needs to be discussed between people. That's a lot.
And well, it's a lot.
Of course, during COVID, before and after, many of the spaces to have good conversation were abandoned, destroyed, lost.
Yeah, that went out of business because
exactly. That's what you guys in Cincinnati with Peter Block Design. How is your company called?
Designed Learning is
Designed Learning. It's very much about the same, but with a different didactical approach, right?
Well, again, we talked about that a little bit as, boy, wouldn't that be a great wouldn't qomenius be tailor-made for the kind of content they talk about in Designed Learning? And
we should talk.
The concept is not lost on me. The other thing that came up when we're talking about the types of information, that need to be wrestled with by people with ideas are like the strategic pillars of the common good alliance that we talk about. There should be land, housing, arts and culture, community capital, and neighborhood economics. That all of those things are people needing to come together around an area of topic that, land use is typically this way, but you can do things like a community land trust, or you can do co-housing and things like that. And those are topics that require a level of, I'm not really comfortable with what are we talking about? And then people come to a greater level of understanding. Then they take a while, take another day or so to let that sink in, come back to more.
Exactly. That's why the cycles of learning and qomenius are very important, because some of the contents, many contents cannot really be settled in a single session, and they shouldn't. You shouldn't expect them to. It should be a cycle of learning that goes through a certain dynamic. So you require usually 3 sessions, 4 sessions, 5 sessions, if the topic has a certain level of complexity, right? And breadth and depth. And for that, you need a certain amount of time. So, courses or learning
domains or
can be built that take, of course, 2 cycles of learning. Maybe
so
8 sessions and so on.
Well, there are 2 things that come up for me that as well is one, the possibility of, because I remember a year or 2 ago, I took the Beta Codex master class. There were 4 of us in that master class. I'm thinking, well, not as lovely as you are as a person to be, facilitating that master class, it would also be a kind of thing that could lend itself to a qomenius approach.
Yes. I mean, we have several modules around that.
The
one that I mentioned would be the first. The first module would probably be the one about human nature, exactly. So of course we have modules for that, but don't say that I just facilitated the master class.
I know.
I kind of pushed you, punished you, kicked you in the ass, tortured you, through some sessions, and it was lovely, right?
The Marquis de Sade.
I'm the Marquis de Sade of organizational development. Yes, thank you very much. That was beautiful. And if you don't want that, do a qomenius cycle. No, that's totally available. That was actually the first kind of content we developed. 5. First we developed 5 modules, then 5 more, then 5 more, and so on. So we have a certain range of Beta Codex related modules. We have also customized contents to certain companies. So today we can customize that. Companies can use the qomenius technology without our content as well, develop their own content, or they can use us qomenius to help them develop their own content on the qomenius platform. All these things are possible by now because we have developed the technology a lot,
Yeah, because one of the things that I wanted to make sure we talked about were what are the available topic areas to go through. We talked about theory X and theory Y. I know there's a self-organization module. There's also, I think there was an agile module at one point we talked about, or what?
Yes.
Organizational.
About agility. Yes, there is a qomenius nanocycle about agility, but not agility in the sense of Scrum and Kanban, because I tried to develop at the time. I tried to develop modules around Scrum, but I never could, and now I know why. Because the concepts are just sloppy.
It would take one session. It would take part of one session really to get.
And then again, everybody ideally would kind of come out of this session and say, Scrum is shit. Thanks, qomenius people, for letting us know that Scrum is bollocks. It doesn't make any sense,
Yeah.
But I tried hard to develop a module at the time around Scrum. I bought all kinds of books about Scrum as well at the time, and nothing came out of it. Now we have TOST modules. So if you really want to learn about software development, but yes, we develop modules about decentralization, leadership, transformational change, several modules around change and transformation. So yes, our catalog of beta codex related, transformation related modules is 20-25 modules or so.
Yeah. So
different sets of content for 90-minute sessions, right? That's what.
Do you mind if I share? Because I was looking on the site to see just a list of modules. Do you mind if I show that for a moment, just to kind of
you can show it? So I'm surprised I wonder what you are going to show. Is it the shop? Is it the shop?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
It's got the taster sessions. There's name sessions.
Yes.
It's the product page.
That is, and that relates what you are about to show here. These tasters are free sessions that anybody can do to 30-minute sessions that anybody can buy for free from our shop to get to figure out how this works. To do a test session basically. To learn about it. And then there are what you see on the right, the new team. That's a full cycle. If you move your mouse over the new team, the image,
let me get that
to the right, then you see, there are 4 modules inside this. All these cycles, we call them nano cycles because it's all about teams, team-based. Nano, we call it nano because the team is the smallest unit of performance in beta thinking. So to signal that, we call the team development modules and content nano. So here you see the titles of the 4 modules that are inside this cycle. That's called the new team. So this cycle of learning, this qomenius nano that people can buy, it's for new teams that you have formed or that you're setting up, and for them to go through these 4 sessions together. Get better at a team, that's this one. Different topics, different set, different structure. So,
and each of those, so just to go into the mechanics of it for a session, like for example, for which one this is the project team.
Yes.
There's 4 sessions, which means
4 90-minute sessions. Yes.
Okay. So that's the 90-minute sessions. Each of those sessions, those 90-minute sessions, there's 5 or 6 kind of conversation topics within those. I forget exactly how many, but you go into conversation in time boxes of
all our sessions are time boxed to usually 90 minutes. And so each of these sessions will take 90 minutes, and the contents and the interventions are also time boxed. That's why we can say it will take 90 minutes, because everything is time boxed in qomenius. It's very interesting that what happens when this is different than in our podcast here. When we do these podcast sessions here, time goes by and we don't look much at the time, right? Time slips away. We deviate, we go in circles, we go back and forth, we misunderstand each other, and so on.
Time keeps on ticking.
Exactly. But there's no control of time really here. We do the opposite in this podcast, right? In qomenius, it's the whole thing is turned around. Every page of content, because there are pages of content. It doesn't look like PowerPoint at all, but there are pages of content, often with interventions that are built to our platform. Like you sort things, you create post-its, virtual post-its as an intervention. You create lists, you write text into individual fields or shared fields, and so on.
And these are within that. So within that 90 minutes, you are going through different exercises. You're engaging in the content in different ways. You're organizing things and having conversation about it. It's a very active session.
Yes, and you read out the content on pages out loud to each other. Which is very odd at the beginning, but it is also part of this learning with each other, for each other, that you read out aloud, which we do to our children, right? And we know it works. We know that it creates focus. And this is a social technique that we take up in qomenius as well. So, yes, everything in all parts or pages of the content are time boxed. The interventions are time boxed. So every participant sees at the top of the page, the the clock ticking, going down, and then moves to the next page. So people learn to discipline each other around the time that's given. This is 3 minutes. Don't stop talking so much. We need to do this.
Well, this is another concept you get into when you're in a beta organization. This is the social density, right? Yes. So there's managing the conflict in there, and you're not reading so fast. Oh God, I hate it when this person's reading, and then there's some discomfort, maybe a little more discomfort, and like, God, they're reading so damn slow, and then I can't get through.
That's usually not trouble. That's usually not a point of conflict. But yes,
there's this sense of I don't know, the discord, or kind of a little bit of there's excitement about it, a little anxiety that there is a time box, that we're going to be done with this topic in 5 minutes, and we're already 3 minutes in. I haven't talked about all there's that. Now I must go back to when I learned Scrum. I learned it from a great Scrum trainer, and that we did an exercise that, I don't know, it was like a 15-minute sprint or something like that. I know sprints are bullshit. But the fact that time, that it was a visceral experience of the time box. And I think that's a pattern that shows up in qomenius. I know, because when I took the session I took far too long ago, that's what I felt in the group. There were 6 of us, and it was like,
So that's anyway. Of course not a 15-minute sprint is nonsense, of course, to say that. Well, if he said that, he was a hox, right? It's just a time box exercise. You did a time box exercise.
Yeah. So either way,
which
I like that you don't.
Yeah. So
a sprint's just well, that's another. Did we do sprints or bullshit on one of the episodes?
It changes the conversation if the time is controlled, if the time is set, or time box or something. It changes everything, right? Because the game changes. Yeah. And
well, maybe
to apply this to conversation is very, very. It creates a different energy.
Mm-hmm. The time smart learner. Yeah, maybe that's it.
Exactly. There's a book of that name, by the way.
An upcoming book.
No. There is a book, Time Smart Teaching, or something like that.
Wow.
Interesting. Yeah.
Well, but this, and we talk about time-oriented software. What is
by the way, qomenius is time-oriented learning, right?
Exactly. What is capacity-oriented learning? It's like taking a giant blob of content and just shoving it out there.
Exactly. Knowledge cramming, testing, vocabulary cramming. That's capacity-oriented learning. It's not much learning usually, right?
No, and then it's just regurgitation of stuff, and that's
bulimic learning, as I like to call it.
Bulimic learning. That's a good one. So
you never heard that? Okay, that's good.
I haven't. Again, bulimia is very.
I always use this when I teach at universities. I always say, look, we could have kept the setting with the seating rows, but that's just for bulimic learning, and I let them figure it out what it means.
Yeah. Well, like a lot of the way that you tend to interact with the public is to offer this provocative statement that kind of shocks someone into thinking, right? So what was the one about leaders and leading being bullshit, power over command and control? So no matter how you say it, leading or a leader has nothing to do with leadership. That kind of thing, or exactly. I don't know, but that was when you said that. I think that's a theme of the kind of learning that happens when you are in conversation with someone. When you're engaging with questions, you're engaging your brain, your critical thinking, and you're growing. And one thing I don't know where I heard this is learning is painful. Learning is painful because you're stretching your muscles in some way, just like if you go to the gym, which I never do, if you go to the gym, you're stretching your muscles, you're getting pain. Now it's like going to the woodshed with your bass or your guitar, is that you get your calluses, your arms hurt, your hands hurt, but that is a sign of growth. It's a sign of It's a
Yes.
sign of increasing capacity, however you want to say that. The capacity
Yes.
to learn. So,
It's a little bit different. There's a little slight difference between training the muscles. You feel the muscles aching sometimes after exercising. And with learning, it's that in the moment of learning, you feel dumb.
yeah.
That's the test. It's a bit different, right? You
Well, you're
feel
so,
stupid,
yeah.
and then you overcome it, of course. But the learning is typically indicated. It's like the muscles aching. You feel a bit dumb in the moment of learning.
Yeah. Well, which in the
Because the
traditional,
inside it hurts, right?
well, because in the traditional learning environment, you're quiet until you actually feel smart, and then you say, "Oh, I have the answer, teacher," and da da da. I feel smart.
I was talking about that. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, and
teaching.
maybe you go back. Well, I want to talk about training. Training is
Yes.
not learning as well.
Yes.
This idea of embracing that discomfort of admitting you don't know, and it's okay not to know because you're dealing with a topic. If you've never heard of what theory X and theory Y are, then there's a sense of, oh, even if I know what theory X and theory Y are, you are a theory X person. Well, that's not really how it works. It is a way of viewing someone, the human nature.
Yes.
That's what.
Yes.
And I would imagine there's probably anyway.
And of course, good didactics wouldn't value the learner more who already knows the stuff, and it wouldn't try to, ridicule the person who might have misunderstood the concept. With which, in this case, of theory X, theory Y, we assume that usually everybody will have will be misunderstanding the concept at the beginning of the session. So it's all a big mindfuck debrief session, right? But the idea is not to humiliate anyone, not to
shame should be abolished from learning.
Exactly,
shame needs to be abolished from learning.
Exactly. That's the qomenius extension. Mr. Qomenius said you have to abolish violence, exclude violence from the learning, and of course shame needs to be eliminated from the learning process entirely as well. Which is why testing is so bad, which is why testing doesn't work, right? Which is why knowledge testing is bad.
Yeah, and the competition,
and frontal teaching, and so on. Yeah.
The other thing that kind of comes to mind in this, that there was a while that, I don't know, this is one of the things to talk about. Trainings. We don't do trainings. That if you're a trainer, you're not really a consultant. You're not in conversation. That you don't do trainings. That there's a difference between training and qualification. And I wonder, can you say a little bit about that distinction between training and qualification?
Yes.
You don't have to.
How deep do you want to dig?
How deep is my love?
Yes. Because qualification doesn't necessarily imply learning, and learning. What's the other thing? Qualification and training. Training usually doesn't qualify, and qualification is not necessarily related to learning, right? So it's a tricky field. Yes, training is didactics. That's the first thing, I think. That's important to understand. Training is a didactics in itself. So a trainer trains trainees, which is how teacher and pupil works. So training is a certain very limited didactics. Sometimes it's called seminars or courses, And then there's qualification. Okay, what does qualification means? Is it preparation for a certification test or something like that, or is it actual learning? And that's why we call this session, learning
without teaching. Yeah.
Yes, or learning without teaching, because much of the teaching stands in the way of the learning. Most trainers stand in the way of the learning most of the time, So seminars usually are organized absence of learning in the presence of trainers. So
so I get to pause. Organized absence of learning. So yes. Clip that. Organized absence of learning. Right.
That's the drama, or the tyranny of training and courses, and so is that there's surprisingly little learning. Yeah.
Well, and now I'm thinking about
it's more about teaching than about learning. And in Comenius, of course, we invert that. We want to get the teaching out of the equation so that the learning can manifest. So regardless of how much you like or dislike the content or the exercise or the other person you're learning with, you will always learn something. Well, it's a big mindfuck to do small group learning. You will always learn something about yourself, about the others, about your communication with them. You know, so even if you consider a session was hard, you will have learned something about the group. Why was it hard?
And maybe the experience, if it feels hard, you probably experienced more learning in that session.
That may even be the case. Exactly.
so this gets me back a couple seconds to the idea of, okay, well, what's the output? What is the outcome of a training? I am trained, right? And I'm trained, but I'm not necessarily qualified because I'm trained to do something, or the qualification it implies that it's more intense. That I am now qualified to do consulting, or to be a teacher, or I'm a certification class that I'm certified, but a certification doesn't mean anything unless you put that certification into practice. And I'm wondering how to even state what the outcome of a learning session is from if we do a qomenius session. After having gone through a qomenius session, what state am I in? I'm not in a qualified state necessarily. I'm not in a trained state. I understand. Maybe it's about achieving understanding through group learning. That could be it. I don't know. What
you would hopefully gain insight. You will also have acquired knowledge, right? Inevitably. Even though that is not at the heart of Comenius learning, you will have acquired knowledge. You will have achieved insight, probably, right? You will have developed relationship with other people, and so on and so on and so on. You will have learned something about your setting, your group, etc. So a lot of ways of learning emerge in a group learning session. Much richer. It's more group learning or small group learning with Comenius has many more facets of cramming something individually by e-learning, or so-called. How is it called? The dual learning, whatever it is, you know. Bipolar learning. How is it called? Exactly. So because you're always part of a group that learns.
Yeah, well, it's like practice. It's rehearsal.
It is like jamming and working.
You're working together. You're developing a dynamic and to get together. And that after you have, and this also I'm getting to the point is, okay, what are we doing? We're preparing ourselves and each other to interact in the actual real world when we're operating in the business. So after I've gone through a qomenius session with my team, I will be better prepared to engage with the ever arriving future that is occurring. So
we hesitate to. I would always hesitate to say that you are qualified or that you have qualified for anything. I hesitate to say this kind of thing, but of course there might be a certification involved, so people can use Comenius content modules and the platform for certification. That's clear.
You're not forbidden from using it to certify.
And of course there can be a certificate of attendance, a certificate of learning, as they say, right? Even better if the group continues to come from extending the learning on and on in some form, even if the group continues in some form. Yes, it's Comenius learning works even better if the group that's doing the learning session together is the group actually doing work together, you know, working with each other, is an actual team. Yeah, sure. Ideally, learning groups in Comenius are teams, existing teams or parts of teams. Very good point. Yes,
I'm going to find out who this person is. So.
No, but it's regardless who wrote it. Thank you for writing and for the question. Yeah, the idea is that ideally team members do sessions together, but it doesn't have to be. Sometimes it can be, you know, it could be just managers or just, you know, people from different associations even also who do not work together. They can also form qomenius circles of learning. Yeah.
You're not forbidden from collaborating or cooperating with someone from another organization if you do that.
Exactly. That could be, some modules might be, or contents could be developed for that. Paul Fallon, thank you for attending. Yes. So qomenius learning is not necessarily for teams in a stricter sense. It might be used in associations or in organizational development, for example. We usually use it with more diverse groups from different areas, so they would not be people working together in their daily activities, but people who come together to do organizational development together, etc. So different settings, different uses.
Mm-hmm. So and now we'll get down to the what was it? Selling is an illusion or something. We're not going to be selling here, but I would at least like to know if you wanted to experience qomenius, how do you do that? How do I purchase this experience?
One way is, thank you for asking, of course. Thank you for enabling me to do a little bit of marketing thing here. You've already shown the shop. So there are these taster 30-minute testing modules available that are specifically designed for people who want to get to understand the didactics, the system, the platform. It's really free test sessions. But these test sessions also already require that you do them in a group of learners of minimum 3 people, and that you are willing to have a conversation among yourselves. You cannot just wait or click through the content. That is impossible, or wait for the content to go by. You really have to engage in a conversation. Some people find that hard to believe. When they do a test run of a software or a system, they usually expect to be shown something. But the idea of the Tasters 30 session, it's really, you have to have the conversation, otherwise it won't work.
So there's
a free way to test qomenius.
Free way to test. You just get a group of 3 or 4 friends who want to learn something, and you get together and do it.
Or if you have a team problem, a team issue, an issue related to the real work, you can also already buy a qomenius nano cycle. One of the cycles we showed earlier, consisting of 4 modules, and you can purchase them on the website. Other things need to be, you need to get in touch with us to talk about the solution. So
the nano again, the price did come up there. It was 990 euro for a nano. And you think about, well, if I got 5 people on a team, that's less than 200 euro for each person. Which, as opposed to sending 4 people to a Scrum course for $1,000 each, is a bigger expenditure. And it's a steal. It's a bargain at 10 times the price.
Yes, of course. As removing the teacher, the trainer, coach, whatever, expert consulting from the equation makes the whole thing, of course, less expensive to organize, less time consuming to organize as well. For example, those 4, if you have a qomenius nano cycle of 4 sessions around team development, you do not have to hire the trainer. That's one thing, but you also do not need to dedicate a full day to this. People just do 4 90-minute sessions, which they can place anywhere in the day where they want. So it becomes a less dedicated, less tiresome, that's hard to set up thing, because people only have to agree on a time slot of 2 hours or 90 minutes, to do a session together. Much easier than to find an entire day for people to do something together.
It's a lot more inclusive globally. You can have someone in several time zones apart.
Yes.
At the same time.
Yes. I mean, we have content in different languages already in the platform. People can set up the sessions whenever it suits them, at any time of the day or night. But of course, the 4, 5, or 6 learners have to come together at the same time in a session. Right? They have to agree on something.
But it's easier.
But it's very inclusive still. Right?
But it's easier to coordinate 90 minutes than it is a 4-hour class. And
yes.
I think that's
easier to coordinate 5 people than 50. At the same time, right? So it's very easy to set up a qomenius learning session, or to have them set up the first, and then at the end of each session you set up the next session. It's very easy to run, very economic time-wise, energy-wise, and effort-wise, and also financial. So it's a bargain. It's supposed to be a bargain as well, because we want to make this kind of learning accessible to everyone. Different solutions have different prices. So Nano is priced at this very economic range. There are other contents that we price differently, but we thought that this is a real steal.
So there's that, the idea of a custom. Also, if you have organizational content that is protected by intellectual property rights, things like that, that's very much in play as well. But that you mentioned, you need to contact you or Silka or through. Can they do that through the website? Is there a way to
request? Of course, there are
these
contact forms and everything. People can call me as well. And yes, content that organizations feel is specific to them, that needs to be discussed, to be set up as their content. And again, we can license the platform to larger companies or associations or organizations or institutions. We can customize content to them, and they can bring their own content. Bring your own content. Sounds like
bring your own BYOC. Bring your own BYOB. Bring your own content. So time-wise, it varies based on the content that's there. Is there a general range in terms from 0? I'm bringing you my content. We're going to work through it for a week, a month. What's the range that you've experienced with custom modules for
to develop the content?
To develop the content between like an engagement. I know, and it varies per organization size and organizational complexity.
Because developing a module of content, it is time consuming. It takes a few days of full engagement, to develop a module. It's not like that, but of course we have a lot of experience. We have a lot of existing content that we can modify, adapt to similar contents, let's say. So we have a few ways to accelerate this process. However,
but it's not like 6 months or something.
No. To develop a module or a cycle will take a few weeks, a few weeks, yes. But then once you have the module developed, you can deploy it for 50 or 500, 5,000 or 50,000 people. And in principle, forever, Of course, you might then have a thing, okay, we have 30,000 people who want to do it in English and 5,000 who want to do it in German, Danish, Polish. So you might need some translation. Also, that can be done in the system, by the system, with the system, requires a little bit of work, but it's not that dramatic anymore. But yes, let's say to develop content, it will never be faster than 2 weeks. Yes, and it's work, but then you can deploy it immediately. That's the good thing about it.
But you got to work through it. And just thinking about the use cases for this type of group learning, that the diversity, equity, and inclusion type of courses that folks, when they're forced upon someone, if they're forced upon someone, it totally puts a shield up. It's like, oh God, I have to go to this diversity class. But when you engage people in a self-organized way, coming together, they come into relationship, they develop understanding. And if you go for a cycle, right, you're developing a relationship with someone.
Yes, we recently had this feedback on modules we developed about child welfare, and the feedback was, oh my God, I expected this to be boring, but I can do that in my private time. It's so much fun, to talk about a serious topic, but in a delightful atmosphere with colleagues, who really also open up, and it's unobserved by a teacher. It's not, there's no teacher there. So everybody is learning together, discussing together, and it's huge fun really to do these sessions. I always notice this when we test the modules as well. It's you always learn something unexpected about other people. Where you agree, where you disagree, about the content, about the interactions. So it's really the least boring way of learning and so easy to set up. 90-minute sessions virtually. The group can decide together where to place their sessions, run them together, set up the next session, do a whole cycle together. It's very, very engaging and usually very fun.
And you can, if you have 3 people, or I don't know, 2 or 3, you can do it for free. You can do a taster session.
The taster session. Yes. Starts with 3 people. So you have to find, if you are alone right now watching this.
If you're an asshole like me, it's very hard to find. You know,
we all have some people, right? We set up the taster sessions so that 3 people can do them, which is not the common mode of doing, but it's up to 6 people. So you can. You can also do the taster session, 30-minute session with 6 people on board. Yeah. We also, of course, if people are seriously interested, we can also make a full session available, to test the content and to test the way the whole thing works. We are happy to, but for that you need to get in touch.
Yeah, well, sure, for the custom configuration.
Exactly.
What is that? Is there a limit?
Usually we do a debriefing as well if people want to, get to understand how it works. We set up a session for them that fits to their needs. Do a debriefing afterwards so that they can clarify their questions right afterwards. So that's.
Now, you said there's a limit of 6 participants in a session.
That is true.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, the small group isn't bigger than 6 people. That's a hard didactical decision that we took. At the beginning when developing qomenius, that the small group has to end somewhere, right? And sometimes that's inconvenient. You have a team of 7. How do you set it up? So we can of course set that up that one group can do it with 3 people and one with 4
does
people.
4.
But usually if you have 8 people, for example, it's 2 groups of 4 people, and then you can do a session at the end of the cycle together for the whole group. There are kinds of options available.
It's the spirit of self-organization. You get to choose how you configure the learning for yourself, with the guidance. And thinking about this, one of the metaphors, that the musical metaphors, it's when you have a sextet, that takes a good bit of coordination. There's a lot there's a lot of play around there. 5 is pretty cool. 4 is easier.
The quartet is the default thing. Gives you a lot of liberties. Right.
And a trio being in my mind is the perfect mode. That there's a great amount of depth as well as there's a lot of open space for conversation.
Yes, certainly. But then again, in an online learning session, the problem with 3 people is that you do not have so much diversity, right? Yeah. Which is why we think for a small group learning session, 5 is the most beautiful number. I agree with you about the music, by the way, right? About the jazz ensemble. Yeah. The trio is very exciting. Gives you a lot of freedom, I recently, last year, I went to see a concert by 2 guys, Michael League.
I know you were going to say that, and the Snarky Puppy guys.
The Snarky Puppy guys, yes. Michael League and what's the name of the pianist? Keyboarder?
Oh Jesus! I can't.
He's just fantastic.
I know that. God, I can't believe I'm of a certain vintage that I forget names now.
Oh boy, I forgot his name as well at this point. I love the guy. I love both. I love Snarky Puppy and this concert. Of course, it was so intense. The 2 guys on the stage and obviously then improvising a little. So of course the duo makes a lot of sense, but in a qomenius learning session, in a conversational, 2 people is not much diversity. 3 people is not much diversity. It gets more interesting with 4 and beautiful with 5 because then you still do not have too much diversity, so to speak, too much for a 90-minute session.
Noise, too much noise.
Yes. You can still, it's even with 6 people, it's still possible that in 90 minutes within our didactics, everybody will get to speak up. There's high level interaction. Nobody will drop out. And that's the beauty of it. 5 people is ideal. 4 is very good. 6 is very good, and beyond that, you would it would be a mess.
That in order to have 7 people in an ensemble, there has to be a more control. I hate to say it. There's the coordination problem. It's a lot more difficult to coordinate.
So it's better to break down groups into smaller subgroups and then bind them together. For example, we have sometimes done this, that we call it qomenius pop-ups. You know, if you have a large gathering, 100 people, 150 people online at the same time, you break them down for group sessions. They all do the same group session at the same time. Then there's a 15-minute break, and afterwards you gather all the 100, 150 people in a plenary and do some kind of open space interaction, some kind of debriefing with everyone. So you can always break down the group into qomenius circles, small groups of maximum of 6 people, and then do something to have them gather, you know, which might be an open space, in a real space. It might be a debriefing or a plenary session in an online meeting.
I gotta say, by the way, Bill Lawrence is
Bill Lawrence, the name.
Bill Lawrence. I had to go.
Bill Lawrence and Michael League published wonderful. Michael League, 2 beautiful albums that are amazing.
The one that I heard is called "Wish Where You Wish You Were." That was the album. That was a beautiful album. I want to say that what you described as the pop-up, it could be almost analogous to what Peter Block talks about in the 6 conversations. What we do, you know, you have a theme, you have a context setting for what was the invitation you come to. Then you break into small groups. Why was it important for you to be here? Then you come back out to the plenary. You have 2 or 3 people to say what struck you about the session, and once you get a few, you get the sense of, by hearing 3 or 4 people, you kind of get the sense of that room, and then you repeat that process in the 6 conversations. You would do it essentially 4 more times because the invitation gets people there. But it's a beautiful pattern. It's a universal pattern. You get into a relationship and you have that breath, and then you get back. It's a very natural pattern that is fit for human beings.
We also build these kind of patterns into the qomenius sessions. For example, every qomenius session ends with this, you know it so well, with this final question, constructivist question to everybody. What have you learned here in the session today? You know, so every module ends with that as well. So there are these patterns embedded in the modules. You can use them beyond the qomenius cycles or modules or sessions. And there are lots of ways to combine qomenius with other formats and interventions that you want to use in organizational learning or group learning or team development or whatever it is.
Fantastic. Well, our loose time box, we're kind of there right now. We're at 76 minutes. What, if anything, would you like to bring forth that you haven't yet brought into this space?
Try it out. qomenius Taster 30s on the website, www.qomenius.com. Yes. And there are also the white papers you mentioned, a white paper that you read about the didactics, about the learning method. These research papers are on the website as well. We call them ebooks there, so you can find in the session under the tab didactics, you find these research papers for download as well. So you can learn about the learning method and the technology there as well. That's the website address. Thanks.
Indeed.
Do you want to add something? Final word?
Try it. Do a taster. Find 2 people you want to learn with. Go to the site. Sign up. It's a lot easier than you think it is to do it, and it'll be well worth your time. It's a great experience. If you like learning and if you enjoy being with people, it's perfect. For those of you who don't like being with people, you know, there's any number of ways. Watch TV, consume. You don't have to create. The rest of us out there who care about humanity will do the creation. So, all right, my friend.
Thank you very much. It was lovely.
Thank you, lovely always. We are in this love together.